Welcome to the ClearlyWell podcast. I'm Elizabeth McKeon, a board-certified psychiatric mental health and addiction recovery nurse. This podcast aims to bridge the gap between mental health and substance use discussions, fostering understanding and empathy while reducing stigma. Join us as we amplify the voices of those with lived experiences, creating a non-judgmental space for their stories to be heard. Thank you for tuning in. Hey guys, Elizabeth McKeon here with the ClearlyWell podcast. Today I'm going to be on my own, just on audio. Last few I've had a video going, and I'm going to try to keep that trend going. But today it's going to be pretty exciting. I have some, I think, information and that's not necessarily always for the general public. But I'm going to start off per usual with a did you know? Did you know that opioid addiction and prescription pain medication misuse are often co-occurring conditions? In fact, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention report that nearly 80% of people who used heroin for the first time had been prescribed an opioid. Many individuals are introduced to opioids through legitimate prescriptions for pain after surgery or injury to include dental work and develop a dependence over time. The neurochemical changes in the brain cause tolerance, physical dependence, and ultimately addiction. This connection between prescribed medications and the opioid use disorder highlights the critical importance of safe prescribing practices, patient education, and early intervention in prescribing and preventing long-term harm, to include the use of the PDMP, which is the Prescription Drug Monitoring Program. The Prescription Drug Monitoring Program is a secure, state-run electronic database that tracks the prescribing and dispensing of all controlled substances. The PDMP was created to help identify and prevent prescription drug misuse, especially opioids like OxyContin, hydrocodone, and morphine. These systems allow healthcare providers to see a patient's controlled substance prescription history in real time prior to writing or dispensing a new medication. And this causes me to go on straight in to today's topic, which, wait for it, guys, is going to be about the Sackler family and Purdue Pharmaceuticals. So the Sacklers and Purdue Pharma, they were a family empire. The Sackler family story is intertwined in a private pharmaceutical company that they owned and controlled for decades. There were three brothers, Arthur, Mortimer, and Raymond Sackler. They acquired a small drug manufacturing company in 1952 and gradually built it into a pharmaceutical empire, which was Purdue Pharmaceuticals. Purdue Pharma remained wholly owned by the Sackler relatives with family as board members, and they occupied the majority of board seats and top executive roles up until the end. This tight family control meant that the Sacklers directly guided Purdue's business strategy, reaping enormous profits into the process. By the 2010s, the Sacklers had become one of America's wealthiest families, worth an estimated $13 to $14 billion, largely due to the success of their big opioid painkiller drugs. In the 1990s, under Sackler leadership, Purdue Pharma developed OxyContin. Now remember, OxyContin was originally the base form of oxycodone. OxyContin was introduced in 1996 and marketed as a breakthrough pain management drug. The Sacklers, through Purdue, positioned this drug as a long-lasting and safe safe guy's opioid for chronic pain. They stated it was not addictive. Behind closed doors, family members like Dr. Richard Sackler, who was Raymond's son and a Purdue executive, pushed aggressively to maximize these sales. They had their pharmaceuticals reps out there running the streets, giving out free opioids to all the doctors. There were internal emails later revealed that Richard Sackler's attitude towards the growing addiction problem infamously wrote, "We have to hammer on the abusers in every way possible. They are the culprits and they are the problems." This hinted at a strategy of deflecting blame on the opioid addiction back onto the patient. So let's talk about OxyContin marketing a less addictive opioid to our physicians. OxyContin 80 milligram tablets were a high-dose version of Purdue Pharma's flagship opioid painkiller. The drug's time-release design was touted as a key to safer pain relief, but it also later was central in the opioid addiction crisis. From the start, Purdue Pharma's marketing of OxyContin minimized its dangers through its marketing representatives. They were carefully trained to reassure doctors that addiction to OxyContin was rare and, in fact, probably would never happen. Reps were armed with the claim that the addiction to this drug, OxyContin, was going to be less than 1%. Guys, think about that. We know that is a straight lie. The company decimated brochures, videos, and literature to help doctors overcome their concerns about addiction. They falsely suggested that signs of dependency were actually undertreated pain, which then made the doctors prescribe more pain medication. In essence, Purdue told physicians that if the patient seemed hooked or needed doses, it was a sign that the patient was being underprescribed the drug, and that the solution was to increase the dose and never question the drug. At the same time, Purdue downplayed the very real risks of overdose and death from OxyContin and other opioids. Aggressive promotion included lavish, all-expense-paid pain management seminars in very fancy places. I won't name those fancy places, but you can just guess where they were. These tactics worked exceedingly well for the Sacklers. OxyContin quickly became a blockbuster. By 1996, sales of OxyContin soared from $48 million to by $1 million in 2016. And a statistic that I happen to know and has nothing to do with today's research was that by 2016, there were enough opioids being prescribed in the United States for every person in America to have a prescription of opioids on their possession. Just think about that. The drug was prescribed for all manner of pain, far beyond its original intended uses, and became ubiquitous in medicine cabinets across the country. But as opioid flooded the markets, reports of abuse and addiction mounted. By 2004, OxyContin had also become one of the leading drugs of abuse or substance use disorder in the United States. Patients soon discovered that by crushing them, they got a slow release, and it produced an intense high, essentially turning the medical painkiller into a recreational, potent narcotic. The Sackler family's commercial triumph in selling OxyContin was unfolding hand in hand with a public health tragedy of opioid addiction. As the human toll of the opioid epidemic became apparent in the 2000s, Purdue Pharma and the extension of the Sacklers were facing growing legal scrutiny. By 2007, Purdue and 3 of its top executives pleaded guilty in a federal criminal case to charges that they misled regulators, doctors, and patients about OxyContin's addiction risk. The company ended up paying around $600+ million in fines, I think, for this misbranding. Let me make sure. $600+ million they paid for this misbranding, and then unprecedented penalties. But notably, no Sackler family members were charged in that case. Purdue continued to market the opioids, and the Sacklers continued to profit, even as opioid overdose were on the rise and were climbing each year. By the late 2010s, public outrage led to cascade civil lawsuits against Purdue and the Sacklers. Nearly every United States state, 48 in total, and thousands of counties and cities were suing Purdue Pharma for its role in fueling the opioid epidemic. Massive litigation revealed damning internal documents that spread the Sacklers' name into the headlines, and by 2019, Purdue had filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, seeking to resolve all the lawsuits in one global settlement. The bankruptcy temporarily halted lawsuits, but it also forced the Sackler family to relinquish control of its company as a part of the negotiations. Testimonies in court and Congress painted Purdue under the Sacklers as prioritizing profits over people. One state attorney general described the situation very bluntly. The opioid epidemic can be directly tied to Purdue's campaign to maximize the sale of its dangerous and addictive painkillers. There were billions in settlements, but no criminal charges. After years of legal battles, the Sacklers agreed to financial settlements totaling several billions of dollars. This is a reckoning, but one that many victims feel falls short of justice. By 2020, Purdue Pharma pleaded guilty a second time to federal criminal charges, including felony fraud and kickback conspiracy related to opioids. And the Sackler family members agreed to pay $225 million to resolve U.S. Justice Department civil claims. Then, in a separate bankruptcy settlement with states and victims, the Sacklers eventually raised their contribution under pressure from an initial $4.5 billion to over $6 billion. And finally, in 2025, which is a new and very latest settlement, they reached a principal sum of $7.4 billion, the largest sum to date for Purdue's owners. This deal forced the Sacklers to permanently give up ownership of Purdue Pharma and be banished from the opioid business in the United States. But even with these multi-billion-dollar settlements, the outcome for the Sackler family has been notably lenient on a personal level. No Sackler family member has gone to prison or been criminally charged for the decisions that helped ignite the opioid epidemic. After the U.S. Supreme Court in 2025 intervened and negotiations were added with more Sackler money to the pot, the deal stripped the family of Purdue but ensured the Sacklers themselves would retain much of their personal wealth and always be avoided a criminal persecution. To me, a person who works in this industry, I find that this is just outrageous and ridiculous. I see the evidence of this every day in my life. I do want to talk about a show I've been watching, and I guess I'm kind of late to the party, but I think it ended in 2019. It's called Goliath with Billy Bob Thornton. And in the season 4, this is an Amazon Prime legal drama. Billy Bob Thornton plays a character called Billy McBride, an attorney, who's going up against a powerful opioid manufacturer called Zacks Pharma. And it's basically a stand-in, clearly modeled after Purdue Pharma. They in the show, Zacks Pharma has a signature painkiller. It's depicted as dangerously addictive and is said to be fueling the opioid epidemic. It makes powerful parallels to the OxyContin. It's pretty unmistakable if you watch the show. It's pretty brilliant. One of the central villains of Goliath's 4th season is George Sachs, the CEO of Zacks Pharma, portrayed by J.K. Simmons. He's characterized by like this ruthless pharmaceutical patriarch, very much in a mold from the Zacks Sackler family figure. In fact, also the brother Frank Zacks, played by Bruce Dern, had been working on a safer, non-addictive painkiller, but George in the show overrides these efforts. It's really a good show, guys. Like I think they did a good job of just offering the story without saying it's the Sackler story. Importantly, Goliath also humanizes the opioid epidemic's toll through its characters. For example, lawyer Tom True is shown fighting against Zacks Pharma while grappling his own personal tragedy, his daughter who had been addicted to opioids. It's just really good. I think it shows the nature of what went on with the Sackler family. I just think the whole thing's a tragedy. The fact that they did not have to personally be prosecuted for what they did other than losing money, to me, is a travesty to the people today that I work with in this industry, the people that, like myself and others who help fight it, and then the folks that I work with in long-term recovery that are up in it, if that makes sense. I do want to give credit back to today's sources. I want to give it back to The Guardian, Massachusetts AGO, mass.gov, American Journal of Public Health, Washington Post, the Colorado AG press release, and a little bit of wiki on Goliath. So Wikipedia. Thanks, guys. That's all I have for you guys today. Thanks for giving a listen for this informational podcast. I do want to say, if you want to weigh in on this topic, you want to be a guest on the podcast, we are certainly trying to bring the space between mental health and addiction. You can call in, write in. We are at ClearlyWellPodcast@gmail.com. I would not suggest writing me on TikTok. I literally can look at TikTok any time of day and have over 300 to 400 messages. So I don't have the time to look at that one. However, on the ClearlyWell podcast Facebook or Instagram or Threads, I do see those messages a little bit regularly. The TikTok page has just kind of gone viral. So please, if you can also write directly, I believe, to messages on Spotify. And also, guys, I did have someone write in something pretty ugly about one of my guests. I ask you in the introduction to please refrain from passing judgment or saying things about the guests. The stories that they tell are real to them. Try to keep that in mind, and please just don't hate on these people. They're doing the best that they can, and so am I. So at the end of the day, thank you all for listening. Again, please reach out if you or someone you know would like to be on the podcast, and we appreciate the love, and thank you so much. Bye. I want to state that please do not substitute this podcast for professional therapy or treatment. The content shared here is for informational and entertainment purposes only. We do ask our listeners to respect the diverse experiences of individuals and refrain from passing judgment. If you or someone you know needs professional help, please seek the guidance of a registered and qualified mental health professional. ClearlyWell is brought to you by Healthy Georgia and produced by CNC Media.